Hi, it's Ashley from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. So as per usual, please stay till the end of the video so you can see how I price these cake pops. Now, I used to think that cake pops were incredibly difficult, so I just kind of gave up on them until one day my friend showed me how to actually make them properly. Really, the only reason why your cake pops will fail is more than likely because the batter or the cake pop dough is not what it's supposed to be. So as you can see here, I'm not really vigorously making this a super small crumb just quite yet. I'm actually feeling it out to see what level of moisture is still in this cake. Now, whenever I make cake pops or cakesicles on my channel, I generally use cake that I've frozen or I've just recently cut off the tops of cakes. And in this particular instance, I was making my son's Spiderman cake, so these are pretty fresh tops. And I find the fresher the cake is, the more moisture there is in the cake, so I don't have to add as much filling. Now, I used to always add buttercream to my cake pops. More recently though, I've really just started only adding ganache. Because of the high butter content in buttercream, you're bound to get some leakage with your cake pops. It doesn't happen all the time, but I find it happens to me quite often. So when I have ganache on hand, I really rather use that. Now, as you can see, this is not a different cake pop that I'm starting from the beginning. I just added some dark chocolate ganache, so it really transforms that cake pop dough. Now, how do you know when your cakesicles or cake pops are actually at the right kind of texture? You'll know because if you can really press it quite hard and get it into a nice smooth ball, then it's ready. Now, in this case, I did some cakesicles as well. So the cakesicle batter is a lot more forgiving because you're putting it into a mold. So pretty much if you can kind of get it all together without it falling apart or without it being too loose, it's ready to go. I like to place my cake pops in the freezer until they're nice and firm, but I don't dip them right away into the warm chocolate because I find when I dip it right into the warm chocolate and it's freezing cold, that's when I get cracks and breakage with my chocolate. Now, I am using candy melts today. If you feel confident, use a higher quality chocolate if you would like to. But if you're starting out, I highly recommend candy melts or candy melting wafers, you might call them, because they're going to solidify a lot more easily. Also, if you want that chocolate really nice and smooth, make sure that you heat it up according to the instructions. Do not let that chocolate seize. Heat it up little by little or even heat it up on a double boiler system. And try not to get impatient with this chocolate. It's really important specifically for this tutorial because we're not really adding in any sprinkles on the cakesicles themselves. So that chocolate needs to be nice and smooth because we're going to be painting. Now, in order to get that chocolate nice and smooth, once it's fully melted, you're going to want to add a little bit of flavorless oil. So a little bit of coconut oil or something of the like will do just fine. And this might sound strange, but the more thin and the more kind of watery it looks, that's probably the texture that you're actually after, because you do want this chocolate to kind of drip away the excess. And you'll notice that when I was actually doing the cakesicles, I did slide the back of it against the edge of the bowl. This is a new technique for me, but I find it works way better and I get a way smoother finish on that cakesicle. Now, in terms of the round cake pops, I approach these a little bit differently. So you'll notice that I inserted the cakesicle stick right into the cakesicle directly with no extra chocolate. It doesn't need it, I find. In this manner, when I want to use a little bit of a fancier stick, I always make sure to dip it into the chocolate and then I put it directly into the ball. I let it solidify and then I go ahead and I do this step. And you'll notice I'm not scraping the edge of the cake pop at all. I just kind of twirl it around just like that until I see that enough of that chocolate has come off and that chocolate isn't going to get weighed down and slide off the cake pop. That is the trickiest part, I find. You really have to make sure that you're letting enough of that chocolate drip off just so you have a nice even coating. And then I wait just a couple seconds and then go ahead and sprinkle. Now, there's kind of a sweet spot moment. You don't want to wait too long to sprinkle your cake pops because if you do, then things are going to solidify too quickly on you and then those sprinkles will no longer stick. This type of method is my go-to when I'm running low on time, but I still want to use up all those leftover cake tops. So I'll go with the color scheme rather than making any super fancy looking cake pops. But of course, we are going to move on to the more challenging ones, which are going to be our Spiderman Cakesicles. Now, I was going to brush this with some sort of red petal dust, or I was going to airbrush it. You guys know I really love airbrushing, but but unfortunately, I just didn't have any more time, and I thought it's not a big deal if I skip the red food coloring this time. So instead, I decided to just get right into painting, and I am using edible paints. If you don't have edible paints on hand, you can use the vodka mixed with edible food coloring, but I do find that on chocolate, it doesn't work as well, which is why I am going the edible paint route this time. Now, when I first watched a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials, I often got frustrated when I would get to the part of the tutorial that I really wanted to learn, and it turned out that they were just freehanding things. So I understand your frustration if you thought maybe I had some sort of stencil or some other trick to get these nice and straight. And I'm sure that there are things that you could do to get this really straight, but I did freehand this. But I have some tips for you to try and get these lines as straight as possible. So tip number one is really make sure that you load up your brush with enough color. Not too much where it has kind of like that bulb of color at the end, but enough so that you're going to be able to make it from one end of the cakesicle to the other. The other thing I recommend is that you do use a fairly thin brush. Now, I am using technically brushes that are made for cake decorating, but that's really not necessary whatsoever. You can just grab your finest tipped brush possible. Now, if you feel more comfortable with going straight down or straight up, or you might want to go from side to side, then just turn your cakesicle that way. Unlike a big piece of work like cake, you do have that option to turn your cakesicle around. This way, you're going to be able to get as much control as you can. And then my next tip is you want to go as quickly as you can. And I know this sounds really weird, but especially on that very first line where it's one solid line from one end of the cakesicle to the other, you want to go quickly. Every time I see people pipe lines for the first time, or I see people draw a line or paint a line for the first time, they go really slow, and then that line ends up being shaky. The best way to do it is actually to swiftly draw or pipe it as quickly as possible. Now, it does take some practice, of course, but once you get it, it's very straightforward. Now what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be filling in all of the details of the web, and that is the easy part. You can definitely take a stylistic choice here. You can either make the webs quite close together or you can do them further apart, whatever you desire. Here are the simpler cake pops. I really love these because they have a nice crunch, but definitely the Cakesicles give us that little bit of wow factor. Just let them dry and they'll be good to go for packaging. Now let's get into the pricing of these cake pops and Cakesicles. So if this was a stock order, meaning that it's not custom done, $2.50 Canadian each, $3 for a custom order, because of course we would need to get those very particular sprinkles, and it would be pretty difficult to always have these on hand, so of course these would be a custom order only, $5.50 Canadian each with a dollar minimum implemented. So whatever that is for your bakery, it could be $200, it could be $300, whatever you decide. Now let's get into the subscriber submission of the video, and this one comes at us from jmd.cake, so be sure to go and check them out on Instagram. If you want to be the next subscriber submission of the video, then please follow me at SD Bake Shop on Instagram, where you can either tag me in a photo or send me a photo. Any and all dessert levels are welcome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!